This still sounds so weird to me, is that all I hear is FD. I just straight up hear FD, and yet it's a Corvette. I'm about 2 weeks away from the clutch being ready for the 3-rotor. The 4-rotor's waiting on Isaiah for the front bumper and the hood latches to all be made and the flat bottom to be made as well. I can't sit still. I am somebody who just has to keep moving my hands. Since I'm working on the wiring harness for this car, I'm gonna pull it out. I built it forever ago for the Rotary Corvette. Well, that phrase means a little bit more ambiguity than it did before, now that there's gonna be 2 of them. This 13B C5 has been something I've neglected as long as it's been down. The wiring harness for the 4-rotor was actually originally made to run in this and then potentially run any of the other rotaries. I'm gonna put it back where it belongs, get this thing fired up tonight, and make sweet, sweet love to it. Some of the things I did take from this car to make the 4-rotor run was the other alternator. So we're gonna try and use this alternator in here, the wiring harness, obviously, the timing setup, which fortunately Full Function had sent me the second one. I wanna show you guys a quick glimpse into what I'm pulling off of this car. This is the actual wiring harness right there. It looks pretty good, but something I wanna work on particularly with this car is these connections here. They're exposed, and either you can put like something in there to make it more waterproof, or there's these little T connector things kind of made out of heat shrink. So I'm gonna do that with the next one. The other side to it is that you can see it all comes to one clean thing. I'm gonna have a nice fat mil-spec connector against the firewall, so it just cuts right there. And then this side is car stuff. One of them goes to an O2 sensor. This goes to the ignition harness. This goes to the dash. This goes to the rest of the car to power things. So really clean, nice and clean there. But as we've gone on, there's always added more things. This is all power for the car. It looks actually much simpler from back here, and it is. The bottom harness was meant to be modular, though that part is actually still in the car. This one is the ignition coils. So, all the ignition system is right there. How it plugs into the 2-rotor, and how it connects into the harness here for signal, and then power. That way that heavy-duty power doesn't run along all that data. This end is where all the magic happens. I changed 2 things. Both of them are in that shot. That is the throttle position sensor, so for your pedal sensor, for a FD. And then that is, I finally finished it, E85 sensor. It's easier to get the trigger wheel sensor in and out of the car when you just depin them. God, this is such a different car than the 4-rotor. I'm not going to be using a lot of the injectors, but I am going to be using all the ignition because that's its own wire that stays with this. Everything else plugs in the same. We've got the same air temp sensor, coolant temp sensor, all of the AEM sensors are all the same. My wastegate from Tile can now be converted into one where I can run tons of boost because I've got boost controller built into this now. I didn't before, it was just a wastegate spring. We're gonna be able to do so much with this car that we were not able to do before. I think the hardest part right now is gonna be getting underneath the coils and plugging them in because this actually goes way down there. So these will still go in the same stock Corvette spots. I'm going to take some heat shielding, cover that whole area as well just for safekeeping. I'm going to take the intake manifold off, plug everything in. And while I do like these AccuFab clamps, I don't like them remotely as much as the Vibrant ones. And that's not even a sponsored thing. It's just that is gross. I like the little push pin connector. Poor car was about to be brought back to life, and then Carl sold me his 4-rotor, and the best thing in my life ever happened. All the shit for this car, that's gonna go next, but look at, there's the old harness. That was the old harness for this car that I made without any heat shrink, and then that's what melted on this car. I did take this manifold off and weld. It's actually the very first thing I welded. This one was always meant to be rotor 1. This was meant to be rotor 2 and all the common ground. And then these just plug in right there. Easy enough. So many unneeded lines. This one will come back. This one's going to be the wastegate. So then the rest of these, we could add 2 more stages just with this many injectors to this. So we'd have 4 injectors per rotor. 1,300 primaries, 1700 secondaries. I'm gonna probably be swapping those out since I have the ID 2600s now. Oh my god. So I was originally gonna add more injectors, but those came out. So it's 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. This is what I love doing. Obviously the 4-rotor is my dream, but this type of work where it's just like a guy in his garage. YouTube has obviously grown and changed my life, but you know, you don't ever forget where you came from. And this is the spirit of my channel right here. I'll stop being weird. My flex fuel sensor is where? Flex fuel sensor is hidden in the dark down here. This should be manifold air temp, which is actually on the bottom side over here. It took like 6 months to get this piece in. I've got 5 of them for that. Stock throttle position sensor for an FD. I swapped the 2 pressure sensors out for the correct ones because I want to make sure all the sensors are the same between all of my cars. Well, they work fine. Same thing, 150 PSI. Oh, that one chipped. Well, that's even better because I replaced it. Right now I'm going to do the most critical one of all. Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. This is the trigger wheel sensor, and that's what broke at LS Fest. It melted over there as well. I'm gonna put together my full function setup like so. I did not find the right bolts. They're the correct threads, but they don't look correct. Now that we've got that. This is what I hate about complete cars. Stuff never falls to the bottom. Let's finally get this crank angle sensor on. Polarity does matter. And I took a picture of that prior to this. That was super uneventful. Normally that's like such a big pain in the ass getting all that correct. I ended up breaking down and buying a new Optima battery. My last one I murdered, but not dead like a normal battery. Normally these glass mat type batteries can be brought back to life if you parallel them with another battery and then put them on the charger. Most chargers won't charge them when they think they're dead, and they're actually not. Mine was dead, D-E-D. Similar to the situation if you go out and drinking at night and you leave a cup of water for yourself in the next morning, sober you appreciates what drunk you did the night before. This is a moment where sober Rob appreciates what drunk Rob did by labeling all of these things, so that way I could hook them back up without much of a problem. It's finally time to do a power on test. The ECU is not connected. The wiring harness is not connected, so this is really just powering the car back on, just to make sure those little rat bastards, literally rat bastards, didn't completely destroy this thing. I'm scared. Oh, okay. The keys here. Let's see if the car responds. I see lights. Got my heads-up display. This car always turns on its air conditioning for whatever reason. I forgot I have the water pump just working. God, I set some things up that just automatically work. Sometimes, Rob, you set yourself up. What was that? Sometimes you set yourself up for success, sometimes you set yourself up for failure. What gross little bastards. You won't really see anything up here, but what I'm concerned about is making sure like my pedal sensor, which is now the FD pedal again, is working. I'm gonna go ahead and reset all this because that will get annoying really quickly. This isn't a Valvoline video. Regardless, we're gonna be using Valvoline coolant. Did not know that they made it, to be honest. And that's, I guess, part of the benefit of YouTube is awareness of products. We're gonna take the ECU out of the 4-rotor for a second, which it was already out because I'm rewiring it. And we're gonna go ahead and use this as our test ECU for that one. I've got almost every single module possible for this ECU, and it's just a tank. Oh, there's my fuel system. So the ECU is going to be telling this signal wire right here, hey, short to ground, to turn on the fuel system. Let's go ahead and plug the ECU in. These connectors only work in their correct spot there. You can see right here, right there, the ECU is now getting the proper 12 volts. No pedal. And now I'm finally getting full pedal. Right now I'm live streaming to Patreon. These guys get to see all the poor attempts of this car firing up. I'm hoping they'll know, but you guys won't know, but they'll know if it doesn't fire up on the first try. It did not start the first time. Well, that is by far the most flooded vehicle I've ever seen. I'm embarrassed. Long story short, my ignition was backwards because of my confusion between the 4-rotor and the 2-rotor. So it wasn't firing the ignition at all. So all of the fuel was just raw, just going through the engine and straight out the back. That's coming out of the exhaust. I took one of the spark plugs off, and I want to show you guys just how flooded this engine was. That's what you get when you don't have your ignition wired up properly at all. All that fuel just has to collect somewhere. There you go, you can see it right there. It's all gas vapor. It's been years, but I'm gonna have to do the good old ATF trick and pour some oil into that engine after I get all of the fluid out. Look at that, that is a leading plug. It doesn't even really matter because both the leading and the trailing look the same. And it's just, look at that, it's just filled with gunk, and then it's completely soaked. So now with the ignition reinstalled, as well as all the injectors tested, we're gonna go ahead and do a test fire. Right away. Go ahead and turn it back off. That's amazing. That was it. That was it. That was the first try on a custom, completely from scratch. I'm talking rotary, not even rotary, engine based map. I was able to get this thing fired up. That is exciting. That was so epic, I couldn't leave it alone. I walked away and came back and realized that the video can't end there. I'm gonna go ahead and button up the rest of these things, put the intercooler pipe back on and all that, put the wheels back on it now that the 4-rotor gets its wheels back for all the body work, drop it to the ground, and move some stuff out of the way so this car can start getting tuned. I can't even hear myself talk right now, but I hate the sound of impact. Well, now that I have my 2, 4, and 3-rotor all by each other, it just feels right. That's the core, that's the heart of the channel. And I'm sorry, Baby Diablo, and well, whatever to you, both the piston cars get to sit in the corner with a timeout. Even now, this still sounds so weird to me, is that all I hear is FD. I just straight up hear FD, and yet it's a Corvette. I haven't had a chance to enjoy this car enough to appreciate the sounds it makes. Close enough. Just the first tune already. I got a lot to do. I just made sure it wasn't running lean. So I got my work cut out for me. I need to check something. This is very important to me. Okay, I gotta fix the pop-ups, but the headlights work.